I'm Lieutenant Colonel Jim Parsons, retired. I'm chairman of the Bella Vista Patriots, and also I'm chairman of the Benton County chapter of ArkTIGG, Transparency in Government. And we're here today to talk about the Architectural Control Committee because they do not allow us to go to their monthly meetings. We cannot look at the records, even though we give them money. They still will not let us look at the books. And so in that regard, that's why we're meeting here today, and this is the reason for this podcast. In 1965, John Cooper Sr. Bought all this area that's now Bella Vista City, and he developed two different ad hoc groups. One was the POA, the Property Owners Association, and they were in charge of the amenities, golf courses, lakes, tennis, all these amenities. And then the other ad hoc group that he had was the Architectural Control Committee, ACC. ACC had the responsibility of making sure that people kept their yards in order, they didn't have too many cars parked in their lot and RVs parked there, the color of their house and so forth. And right on in the covenants of the Cooper community, there was the article about there'll be no white houses. And sure enough, there are no white houses. A couple of white churches, and Cooper has a couple of white houses we've found, but other than that, there are no white houses. And Senior Cooper said that he thought white was not consistent with the brown tree trunks and the green leaves and green grass, and that white was a distraction, and so he didn't like white. Well, on January 1 of this year, the ACC said, I guess in his honor, they said there would be no more white fences, that they would not be allowed in Bella Vista. And if you didn't take them down, they would sue, and they would start fining you and charging fees. So that's what they've been doing, and the fences have been coming down. And the word I hear all the time is it's ridiculous. The Arkansas motto is the people rule. And in this particular case, we have 30,000 people here in Bella Vista that would say white fences are okay. And yet there are 6 on the ACC board. All of them are appointed, they're not elected, and they are ruling 30,000 people. That's wrong. That goes against the motto of Arkansas. So I went through my state representative and asked the Attorney General, do they have the authority to be selling permits, fining us the way they're doing? Was that legal? She came back and said she couldn't opine, even though that's supposed to be her duty to give opinions. And so she did say at the end of her email to me, to get my answer to that, I would have to go to circuit court here in Benton County and ask a judge. And so I did. I filed the lawsuit, and Judge Scott came back and gave the same answer he's been giving all the time, that many times I've sued the POA, and that is that there are just no state statutes and there are no laws that govern nonprofit organizations. And so he couldn't really say anything, and he dismissed the case. Did charge me $1,500 for attorney fees just because I asked the question, and I think that was kind of a punishment for bringing it up. And so we are going to load a bus in January, and we're going to go to the legislature, and we're going to lobby to get a law that will stand up and that attorneys can use, because right now attorneys say they just don't have a law that they can hang their hat on, and so we want to give them one. And that lawsuit will be that ACCs and those groups like that who have appointed board members and they're not elected cannot sell permits, fine us, or charge fees. And so that's where we are right now. And that's a little bit of history of what's going on and what this podcast is about today. Do have Mike Tesh, who is here, who has been instrumental and active. He has a beautiful white fence, and of course he wants to keep it like so many others, and is hitting resistance from the ACC. But he is saying what judges will say whenever you take a nonprofit organization to court, and the judges will always say that even though there are no federal laws, no state laws, no county ordinances, at least nonprofits ought to follow their own policies. And Mike Tesh is here to address that. So this is Mike Tesh.
My name is Mike Tesh, and I'm part of the White Fence Defense here in Bella Vista. And I just wanted to point out some of the things that the ACC is doing. As Jim said, the ACC banned white fences in Bella Vista. And even those of us who had previously installed white fences that were properly permitted and had been grandfathered in for the last 12 years, the ACC decided that we needed to get rid of ours because they had lost all of their records and they didn't know who was permitted and who wasn't. So therefore, their ineptitude meant that we were being punished by having to take down our white fences. And it's just plain tyrannical behavior, and it violates their own policy and procedure manual, and it violates the legal doctrine of laches and waiver, and it also violates the rules of common decency. The policy and procedure manual of the ACC states in paragraph 102A, the purpose of the ACC is to assure compliance with the covenants and the policies and procedures of the ACC as herein stated. So that means whatever it states in there, the ACC is tasked with assuring compliance. Rule 106A says, and there's a whole bunch of them here under 106, and they all start with the ACC shall not, and this is under the heading of limitations. The ACC shall not adopt or enforce standards in an unreasonable, arbitrary, or capricious manner. Well, it is certainly unreasonable to expect a white fence owner to spend possibly thousands of dollars to change a fence that was previously legally permitted. That's the very definition of arbitrary to ban white fences, and meanwhile they allow white trim on houses, white railings on decks, white garage doors, and so on. Rule 106B states that the ACC shall not fail to act in a common sense approach. If a white fence ban was common sense, everybody would be able to see what the reason for it was, but it's not common sense. And so far, the only reason that any of us have gotten out of the ACC is basically that they just don't like white. We've talked to realtors and appraisers both, and they all agree that fences add value to a property regardless of color. Rule 106D says the ACC shall not allow personal aesthetic considerations to guide its decisions. The ban is clearly a personal aesthetic consideration. The ACC has been provided a petition against the ban with well over 400 signatures. Local papers and social media articles indicate that the community is almost totally against the ban. Rule 106F states the ACC shall not substitute its personal preferences and taste for those of an individual property owner. Obviously, that's exactly what they're doing, in spite of the fact that the above rules are designed to protect property owners from an out-of-control ACC. If they are not stopped, what is the next thing that they will ban? They must be stopped, and a group of Bella Vista residents is trying to do just that. One of our residents, who is a single mother and can't afford to fight this by herself, will be in court on March 2nd, 2023. And it is hard to imagine that a judge would side with the ACC. In the words of their own lawyer, Mr. Clements, the relationship of a landowner who buys property in Bella Vista Village is that of a contract. Therefore, I, as a property owner in Bella Vista, have a contract with the ACC, and part of that contract is the limitations as are outlined in paragraph 106 of the Policy and Procedure Manual. If the ACC does not have to go by their own rules, why in the world should I have to go by them? I'll just leave you with some questions. What good is a permit that can be revoked? And why do we have to abide by the rules if the ACC doesn't? And if this is allowed to stand, what is next? Will they ban white garage doors, white trim, white railings? They can basically do anything they want if they're allowed to continue this. What's to keep them from saying they don't like two-story houses and make me tear down my house and replace it with a one-story house? I don't even have a copy of the permit for my house. Same with my garage. I don't have a permit for that either. So I'm sure it was there at one time, but I just bought it a couple of years ago and was not given any paperwork with it. So, and Buddy Vernetti has referred to our opinions in the paper as trash. And I don't like my opinion being called trash. Anyway, I hope we can turn this thing around and that the ACC will see how unreasonable they're being. Thanks.
We are now going to close with Professor Michael Getty. I'll not try to introduce all the things that he's done in his life. I'll just simply say that he is, as far as I know, the best and foremost authority on the U.S. Constitution, the Arkansas Constitution, and he believes that what we're doing here with our white fences does go against the Constitution and the reason that we formed this country in the first place. And he's going to talk about our founding fathers and that this was not to happen. And so this is Professor Michael Getty.
All right, my name's Mike Getty, and I'm happy to be able to talk on this subject. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I was assigned out of the U.S. Army to the National Security Agency, Fort George B. Meade, Maryland. Then I became a civilian employee, and then into the 1980s, I became a member of the American Foundation for the Accountability of Prisoners of War and Missing in Action, and eventually became its vice president. We worked extensively for about 5 years trying to account for the prisoners of war, not only from Vietnam, but from Korea and World War II as well. And after that effort, I went into actually researching and teaching in American history. And I have taught at multiple levels, including the college level, and I do podcast and actually have been a expert witness on constitutional issues in legal proceedings.
Okay, so Colonel Parsons has told you about what is happening here in Bella Vista. Did you have some thoughts on what he has told you?
Oh yes, yes sir, very very much so. And the thing that he and I talked about, and the Colonel and I have talked for years on these issues, but the America was founded around the basis. We go back to the Declaration of Independence, and Thomas Jefferson, as most people are aware, was the author, and he spoke extensively throughout his political and his private life about property. And he said, without being able to manage and control our own property, we will never be free. People who do not have the say-so about that which they own are, in fact, slaves. And I know that, most people's connotation of slavery is, people in chains working in a cotton field. But if what you own is not yours and can be controlled by someone else, that's Marxism. That's Marxist socialism. That is not freedom. That is not what America was intended to be. And if we jump from the Declaration of Independence to the U.S. Constitution, we go to Article 5, and Article 5 is most adamant that any time any part of your property is taken for any reason by any government entity, you must be duly compensated. So what's the compensation? And then we look to the Arkansas Constitution, and the Arkansas Constitution is quite unique in the fact, but it goes along with so many other states, and that is the fact Article 1 of the Arkansas Constitution speaks to the boundaries, the state lines, and what have you, Article 1. Article 2 is all about the rights of the people. And like any other contract, the most important things are listed first. Article 2, especially Article 21, covers private property and what private property means to an individual. And if you, as Jefferson said, if you cannot own property, you are not free. I know that that may sound redundant, but if you cannot own and control your property, if you cannot control it, you're not a free person. And if you're not a free person, to do with your property as you wish, as long as it doesn't harm someone else. Jefferson was emphatic about that. You can't use your property to harm other people and to violate their rightful liberty, but your rightful liberty gives you the right to do with your property whatever it is that you wish. And again, without it, we are not free, we are not Americans, we are Marxist socialists.
One of the arguments that the ACC makes is that you signed a document when you bought your property here and you agreed to our rule over you. Do you have reflections on that?
Well, I would have to actually examine the contract or exactly what was signed to that end to make an appropriate response, but I don't know how anyone could actually surrender their freedom. And if someone has bought a piece of property and they do not own it or control it and someone else owns it, then they do not own their own property. If someone else can tell you what to do with it, they have dominion and control. Dominion and control establishes who actually possesses the property.
What does he think about our going to the legislature and trying to change the law? You have any comment about that, or maybe he'd go with us?
Oh, I would be more than happy to make a spiel or a pitch in your behalf, Colonel, and the other folks as well. I have found during my experience with legislators in the state of Arkansas over several years is that, unfortunately for us, most of them are ignorant about constitutional rights. Today, unfortunately, again, we elect people on a popularity basis like high school, not on knowledge, not on what they actually do. And I've had some very interesting conversations over the years, even back in about 5 years ago, was challenged a couple of Arkansas senators to debate the rights of the people. And they chose not to have that debate. But I would be more than happy to make the spiel. I've gone down for different individuals. I know I went down and gave a presentation once on the what we're talking about now, the new constitutional convention that was discussed that the legislature voted on some years back. But no, I would be more than happy to make a legal presentation. I'm not an attorney, but I would be happy to make a constitutional presentation for the people. And if our rights aren't guaranteed, we have no rights.
Thank you for that. We will be inviting you to go with us then whenever we go and load this bus and go to the legislature. Thank you.
Professor,
I would look forward to that, Colonel.
Professor, were there other items that you wanted to talk about that we haven't gotten to yet?
Well, not especially, sir.
Okay.
I just wanted to be very emphatic about, and I think Americans really need to grasp the fact of freedom and slavery. And I know, again, pardon that connotation, but slavery is not always people in chains. It's people who can't have the dominion and control over what is their personal property. That is freedom.
We thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. We feel like that this is a significant issue. The white fence is coming down here in Bella Vista, not only a local issue, but this could happen in your community. And we thank you for tuning in today. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Jim Parsons, retired, and I'm chairman of the Benton County chapter of ArkTIGG, which is Transparency in Government. And we just thank you for tuning in, and please pass on the information you've heard today. Thank you.